And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed.
Go Dragons!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
In the room of Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yep.
It's playoff. Get going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Welcome to Chasing the Trophy Fantasy Football Podcast on the Dirty Boot Sports Network. I'm your host, Derek Sanders. Coming at you this week for the Waiver Wire pod for the upcoming Week 3. Man, some crazy stuff going on in the NFL. We're going to try to get you caught up on a few injuries and big things that happened, maybe some options for you coming up for Week 3 coming up. Unfortunately, Clay was not be able to catch up with us this time, but he's going to get back with us eventually. But first, we're going to just go ahead and jump right on into it, knock this thing out, make it quick for y'all. So go ahead and have a word of prayer. Lord, just thank you for giving us this opportunity and just honestly the ability to come and be able to do this, Lord, as something that we love to do. And hopefully it's something that, will be able to give us a way to bring glory and bring people closer to you, Lord, and just something that we do and we enjoy. We just thank you for giving us that opportunity. Please be with Norkay. She's still undergoing her immunization treatments and just kind of building her immunity back up. Be with Crew Tidwell and his family as they're fighting that battle against cancer, Lord. And if it be your will, just put your hand on them and touch them as they continue to share their testimony for you, Lord. And then also be with all the Hurricane Francine victims down south and all the damage. As I know, there was a lot of people down on the coast that it hit pretty hard in Louisiana and Mississippi. Just be with those people, Lord. Just please continue to let us lead, guide, and direct, and just be a light for you and shine and just live for you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. So this episode, we're going to talk about our top waiver wire additions that were owned in less than 60% of ESPN leagues. Typically, we select some of the top positions at each player, top players at each position. Y'all bear with me because I'm getting over some sinus stuff, and hopefully my voice will make it through this. But anyway, these are some of the top position players that we think could help you. And honestly, this week's really tough because there is so many injuries, and there's really not like some big names, and there's really no clear, person for a lot of these teams to take over some of these spots. Some of them are a little bit more clear than others, but man, it's pretty crazy. But we're going to roll right on through it. We want to thank our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Meet Me's Children's Boutique, and Crown Detailing. And our title sponsor for this episode is Mimi's Children's Boutique. Located in Jonesboro, that fulfills all clothing needs for your little ones. Owners Melissa Johnson and Megan Harrell offer children and baby boutique brand clothing and accessories, vinyl print t-shirts, and so much more. You can find them on Main Street in Jonesboro from 10 to 6 Tuesday through Friday and 10 to 2 on Saturday. And then just kind of some upcoming pods that we got coming up. We got a Start Sit Sleeper pod coming up at the end of the week. Clay's probably going to get a graphic out for this Waiver Wire pod, and then a Start Sit Sleeper graphic for the end of the week. Now, finally got some of our retreats behind us from my church, then I should be a little bit more regular with getting these episodes out. But I'm just thankful for Clay holding it down for me while I was trying to serve in any way I can with the church. And it was a real blessing for the men's and women's retreat. If you've never been on a men's or women's retreat, I highly encourage you to do that because it's definitely something that something that'll change your life for sure, for the better, especially for the Lord. So just throwing that out there. Anybody's interested, y'all can always reach out. But Start Sit Sleeper pod coming up end of the week. Let's jump right on in some news and injuries. Of course, one of the big ones, CMC gets put on IR. Crazy. A lot of us did not see that coming, so he's going to miss at least the next 4 weeks. And there's rumors that he's probably likely to miss about 6 weeks, so that's pretty nuts. So if you got Jordan Mason, good for you. Keep firing him up. Hang on to him because it's looking like a he's looking like a top 10 running back as long as CMC's out. And honestly, if you got CMC, um, if you're in a bind, you might want to consider trading him. If you're doing okay, then hang on to him. If you got an IR spot, throw him in there. But other than that, it's going to be a little while before you get him back. Monroe St. Brown come out of the game with a lower leg injury. Dan Campbell said he would be good. We'll see. Just got to watch practice schedule as the week goes. I'll be updating some of these on the starts at Sleeper Pod as well. Justin Jefferson out with a quad contusion at the end of the game the other day. His coach said he's day to day. I'd watch practice. Typically, quad contusions aren't too big of a deal. As long as they're kind of resolved throughout the week, he should be fine going forward. But I'd keep an eye on him. A.J. Brown, hamstring injury. Honestly, this seemed like it almost come out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he was questionable, and then he was doubtful, and then he was ruled out on like Friday, and he didn't even play till Monday. So I'm glad he got ruled out early so we could fill in for him. But man, that was going to be rough if they let him be questionable or doubtful until the game time. But he stated on a news interview right before Monday Night Football that he's going to be out a couple weeks, which is pretty crazy. So must be a pretty decent hamstring injury. So if you got A.J. Brown, be looking elsewhere. If you got Devontae Smith, be glad because you're about to get wide receiver one production for the next couple weeks. And he definitely looked good on Monday Night Football. Sorry, guys. I'm keep wetting my throat as I go here. Isaiah Pacheco's our next one up. Lower leg injury, actually fractured his right fibula, which is that bone that's on the outside of your ankle. He's going to need surgery to repair that. He's going to be out at least the next 6 weeks. So big blow to them for Kansas City. I've got some options for you that we'll talk a little bit about later on. Debo Samuel, calf injury. Kyle Shanahan stated he's going to miss at least a couple games. Shocker there. I mean, Debo hurt. I mean, you pretty much expected this point. If you draft him, you know it's coming. But yeah, he's out. So but Brandon Ayuk is definitely going to get a boost in that offense. But I think George Kittle also gets a big boost in this offense too. I don't know if there's anybody off the waiver that I would be considered with, but anyway, Debo Samuel out. Joe Mixon ended up leaving his game and then returned with an ankle injury. Probably tells me that it is a low ankle sprain, but it's not considered long term, is what they said after the game. So we'll keep an eye on that. Cooper Kupp comes out of the game with an ankle injury, and then after the game, Sean McVay said Kupp will be out for an extended period of time. So that really sounds like it's a high ankle sprain. So we're probably thinking at least 3 to 4 weeks, if not 4 to 6, which is crazy because Puka Nakua's out. Then Cooper Kupp's like the man, and then he gets hurt and he's out. So who knows who's going to be the man? We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But then Kenneth Walker had this abdominal injury after the week 1, and then during practice ended up being they kind of singled it singled out to be a oblique injury, and then he got ruled out at doubtful. He ended up being out and missed the game. They're hopeful that he comes back. Just watch his practice schedule as it goes. Evan Ingram, hamstring injury during warm-ups, I believe, or practice Saturday, one of the two, and ended up getting ruled out. It's considered week to week. T. Higgins, hamstring injury, still out this past week, ruled out prior to the game. Coach stated that he's moving in a positive direction to play on Monday night. Watch the practice schedule. We'll just have to see how that happens. Keenan Allen with that heel injury, man, he was talking about some bad shoes or bad insoles, and then he ends up missing the game on Tuesday. He must have had a setback or something because that's just crazy to me. But anyway, Keenan Allen was ruled out. No new updates since he was ruled out for the game Sunday. So keep an eye on that. Njoku was ruled out for his game, and they have not ruled him out for week 3, but they're still considering week to week. So that tells me it's probably unlikely that he plays in week 3, but I would keep an eye just to see if he gets any practice time in this week. Jake Ferguson with that MCL sprain, almost played in week 2, ended up getting ruled out about a day before. Actually, it might have been Sunday. But anyway, he got ruled out, but he almost played, so that tells me he's going to be back in week 3 probably, as long as he doesn't have a setback. Raheem Mostert ended up getting ruled out before the game Thursday night. Did not practice Monday, and it's not considered long term, but if he's still not practicing, that does not hold out much hope for him playing this week, especially since he sat out last week and still hadn't started back practicing yet with some kind of chest injury. Jordan Addison ended up getting ruled out last week, which is crazy because he had some limited practices, but he got ruled out. They're hoping he's going to be available for week 3. I think if he was getting limited practices in last week, as long as he didn't have a setback, he should be back. Tua Tagovailoa for Miami ended up having another really bad concussion, a really scary sight where he pretty much got hit and had a seizure. And it technically is a concussion, not specifically a seizure, but anyway, it was like that type of activity. And now they're talking about they put him on IR, but it could be a career-ending injury because he's had so many of these severe concussions over the last couple of years. So there's talk that he could end up deciding to retire. We don't know, but if you got to her, you're probably safe to drop him for now and look elsewhere. And then last but not least, Marquise Brown ended up, I don't know if he re-injured his SC joint or what, but they ended up putting him on season-ending IR, and they do not expect him to come back this year, which is crazy because he was like about to getting ready to come back on the field. So I don't know what happened, but whatever it is, he ain't gonna play this year, which is great news for Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice owners. But bad news for Marquise Brown owners. If you got him on IR and you need the spot, you can drop him. If he's on the end of your bench, you may as well just go ahead and drop him and find somebody else. And that's going to round out our news and injury updates. And jumping right on into our waiver wire for week 2. Quarterbacks, pretty much, honestly, these are the top quarterbacks. Some of the top quarterbacks in the league. They're all top 10 quarterbacks. And which is crazy that they're on this list and they're all owned in less than 20% of leagues and they're all top 10 quarterbacks. Yeah, that's right. Through 2 weeks. So number one's got to be Derek Carr. I mean, I talked a little bit about him last week. I had my apprehension going up against Dallas. But dude comes out and shows out. The Saints offense, defense, everybody really embarrassed Dallas. And New Orleans looks for real. I mean, I'm still tempering my expectations because I've been let down before, but this looks like the Derek Carr I personally was expecting to get when he came here. And I'm guessing Pete Carmichael must have just been like really suppressing the talents of this team because this new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak comes in, they get like a couple couple younger offensive linemen, and the next thing you know, we're looking like world beaters out there. So I mean, there's been some analysts talking about like Super Bowl aspirations for this team, and I'm like, my goodness, like there really ain't been a lot changed. I mean, we got rid of Michael Thomas. I've been saying should have done that for years. If that's all it took to get Super Bowl aspirations, man, they should just cut that mug when Sean Payton was there. But anyway, off on that tangent. But yeah, Derek Carr, this past week against Dallas, 31.82 points, was QB2 on the week, and is QB1 in 6-point per touchdown leagues, and I think QB2 in 4-point per touchdown leagues, and just depending on your format. But man, he looks good. I'd get him while you can, even if you don't need to start him. I would, if your backup's not as good as him, pick him up so somebody else can't pick him up. Okay, play some defense there with a waiver wire. The only way you don't pick him up is if both your quarterbacks are like pretty much top 10 quarterbacks, because he's probably going to be a top 10 quarterback going forward. And that's pretty much the only way you don't pick him up. Number 2's got to be Geno Smith. Only owned in 16.3% of fantasy leagues. Last week had 23.88 fantasy points, was QB5 on the week, and ended up now he's QB9 on the season. Honestly, he just has everything he needs to be a top 10 quarterback for the rest of the season. His offense, he's got all the weapons he needs. He's got offensive-minded head coach. There's a tough matchup this week going up against Miami a little bit, but honestly, other than Jalen Ramsey, there's not a ton to be afraid of on that. And then he's had 5 rushes in back-to-back weeks. So not only do you have all those weapons, he throws the ball a fair amount, but he's also rushing the ball 5 times a game. So you can't be mad at that. I love Geno Smith at number 2. Then number 3's got to be Sam Darnold. I told you all about him before the end of the season. I mean, at the beginning of the year, Clay was, I get the apprehension with Sam Darnold because of who he is and where he's been. He hasn't really been that successful, but guys, like, he has the weapons. He's got an offensive-minded head coach. He's in a perfect situation to make a step forward in his career. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I think Sam Darnold's going to be a very fantasy relevant quarterback, at least top 12. As long as he stays healthy and these weapons stay healthy in this offense, he's going to look good. He's only 5.7% owned in fantasy. This past week, 26.92 fantasy points. These are all 6 point per quarterback leagues, 6 point per touchdown leagues, by the way. But he was QB3 on the week. He's QB8 so far on the season. I mean, as long as Justin Jefferson's healthy, Hawkinson's coming back, Jordan Addison's about to come back, and I mean, dude, honestly, it's great. He gets Houston this week, which is an okay defense, but it could end up being a shootout with Houston's offense. So, love Sam Darnold. I definitely pick him up. He's another great person to have as a backup quarterback on your bench if you need one. Then we're going to move on to running backs, which is essentially just a dart throw. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. They're all over the place. Who knows where it's going to be at? A couple of these guys, I really like some of their long-term value. Might not be as much in the short term, but they have a lot of value on your bench for sure. But the first one's got to be Rico Dowdle for Dallas. It ain't been nothing pretty so far for Dowdle, but he's just slowly getting a little bit more work each week, taken away from Zeke, and he's getting more involved in the passing game each week. So that's what I really liked. He's only 37.2% owned. He's going up against Baltimore this week. He's the preferred passing downs back for their team. The O-line looks like they're really struggling for run blocking, so he's not getting a lot of room to run. Neither is Zeke, and then they're having to pass the ball more, and he is the one in there on the passing. So in this offense, you really want whatever running back is involved in the passing game because they throw the ball so much, and it's Rico Dowdle. If he ever starts getting some of the goal line work, I mean, you're talking about probably at least a low end RB2 right there. And I just think it's just a matter of time till he emerges and kind of starts being the guy. And you kind of want to be ahead of that. So if you got the room, pick him up, stash him on your bench. Next guy's got to be Braylon Allen for the Jets. Essentially, Brees Hall's backup that is coming in and putting up points. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. Hang on, I was gonna get some stats for y'all on this. I'm sorry, guys. It's been some terrible sign of stuff. So this past week, he only played 35% of the snaps, Braylon Allen. 7 carries, 33 yards, 4 targets, 2 catches for 23 yards, a rushing and a passing touchdown. Ends up with 19 points this past week on 35% of the snaps. I mean, he's 20 years old, 6'1", 235 out of Wisconsin. That should tell you all you need to know as far as him as a running back. And the kid, honestly, is Brees Hall 2.0. Catches the ball super well, runs super hard. So, for one, he's Brees Hall's backup. If Brees Hall goes down, he's a top 10 running back. 2, he's getting involved more with Brees Hall. 3, Aaron Rodgers is a check down machine right now, and he's given Brees Hall all he can handle in the passing game. And then now when Braylon Allen comes in, he's giving him targets. I just like his opportunity a lot, especially with Brees Hall's injury history. Dude, if he gets hurt, Braylon Allen is the man, and he might be flex valuable even without that. So I like Braylon Allen a lot. Number 3 for me is going to be either Carson Steele, Samaje Perine. Honestly, flip a coin, pick one. Excuse me. Both of them are owned in less than 5% of leagues. They're going to be in Atlanta this week. I really don't know how it's going to play out. My gut tells me Perine's going to be the guy because of his experience and his pass catching ability, pass blocking ability. But there's been a lot of buzz around Carson Steele. But he did lose a fumble Sunday. But honestly, normally when there's a lot of buzz around a player, there's always smoke, there's always fire. A lot of the analysts think Carson Steele is going to get the first crack at the job. Maybe he does. I don't know, man. Samaje Perine is still a really good running back and experienced. I just feel like I just think that they're going to be more comfortable with him in that offense and that system. But who knows? Either way, Carson Steele, Samaje Perine. If you get a chance to grab one, stash one on your bench. If it ends up being the right one, it can be super valuable for you down the line. If you have the opportunity, grab both. See what happens this week, and then drop the one that ain't the guy. If you want to do that, But either way, they're going to be somebody that you want to be attached to until Pacheco comes back. And then last but certainly not least, Bucky Irving. Honestly, this is kind of just a handcuff like pre-thing because Bucky Irving owned in 29.5% of leagues going up against Denver. So he's running back. He's the backup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Rashad White, sorry, ended up leaving the game. Wasn't very productive in the game. Ended up leaving for a brief period with a groin injury, came back, still wasn't very productive. Bucky Irving got several opportunities. He wasn't very productive. Really, neither one of them were very productive in this game. But the fact that White is not being very productive, they're going to slowly let Bucky Irving get some more opportunity. And if Bucky Irving ends up making the most of that opportunity, he could end up turning this into a 50-50 backfield. Or if Rashad White ends up getting hurt or something, Bucky Irvin's going to be the man, and he's probably going to be an easy RB1 going forward because he's really good at pass catching. He's really good in the goal line situations. Honestly, if anything happens to White or if White continues to not be productive, Bucky Irving's going to be pretty valuable going down the stretch in this offense that it looks like Tampa Bay is going to have a really, really good offense for the rest of the year. So I definitely want the running back that's going to be heavily involved in that, and Bucky Irving could be one of those guys. So that's all my running backs. And then we're going to roll right onto the wide receivers, which I like to call this segment the crapshoot of players because there's so many that, I mean, who knows, last week there was a whole bunch of different people on here. Heck, there's two of them that were on here last week that are on here again. So, but we're going to roll right onto them. Number one and number two could flip flop. Even 3 and 4, honestly, several of these guys could be some of the most productive ones on this list. Really, to me though, Quentin Johnston, it's just because he has that pedigree, being that big time college wide receiver that he was, a big time playmaker out of TCU. Quentin Johnston for the Chargers, owned in 7.1% fantasy leagues. Last week, really nothing crazy. 6 targets, 5 catches for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Justin Herbert only throws the ball 23 times, and he targets one receiver 6 times. That's 30% target share pretty much. I mean, especially, but my thing is the 2 touchdowns. So, one of them apparently was a spectacular play, and the other one was in the red zone. I mean, if he's getting the opportunities in the red zone, he's a big guy. He's 6'4", 225 or something like that. Kind of a Mike Williams-esque player. If he's getting targeted in the red zone, that's definitely the guy you want at wide receiver in this offense. But honestly, he was number 1 wide receiver for a reason. And he's finally starting to show some promise that we thought he was going to do last year, building that chemistry with Justin Herbert. It's not a high volume, not a high pass volume offense, but if he's going to lead the team, and he currently leads the team in targets, receptions, red zone targets, and receiving touchdowns. So he could be taking a step forward that we expected last year, this year. So Quentin Johnston's my number 1 for the Chargers. Number 2's got to be Alec Pierce. Honestly, he's wide receiver 7 on the year, coming out of nowhere, man. Only owned at 13.6% of leagues. And really, it's kind of crazy. So not the number 1 wide receiver on his team to start the year, but definitely that right now. Not saying he's going to be that going forward, but this past week, 7 targets, 5 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. Honestly, he's just a big play waiting to happen with Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson is not afraid to sling that ball down the field, and Alec Pierce is a big wide receiver ready to go up and get it. And he's big and fast. I mean, that's all you need to know. This week, he's got a kind of a tough matchup against Chicago, but honestly, he's just got really good chemistry. He's got something that with Richardson that Pittman does not. And I don't know what else other to say than that. He's been wide receiver 7 through 2 weeks, and I just don't think you can ignore that. If you pick him up and it doesn't continue, then drop him for the next thing. But if you have the opportunity and you don't pick him up and this does continue and he ends up just emerging as the wide receiver 1 in this offense by some sheer whatever, I mean, dude, that's a league winner right there if he keeps putting up production like this. Anyway, especially considering that I think Anthony Richardson only threw the ball 19 times, and Pierce got 7 of those targets. Like, I mean, that's a big target share. So I like him a lot. The only thing that scares me is Josh Downs is about to come back. We don't know how that's going to affect this wide receiver room and the target production for the target, like, I guess, dispersal amongst the wide receivers. So I'd keep an eye on that. But I do like Alec Pierce. Josh Downs is a little bit later on in this list. I think Alec Pierce, with what he's done so far, deserves to have a look if you need help on your team. Number 3 for me has got to be Demarcus Robinson. Honestly, 3 and 4. One of them's Demarcus Robinson. The other one's Tyler Johnson. It's still up in the air. I really expected one of these guys to kind of step forward this past week. Even with Cooper Kupp going out, nobody really stepped. I don't know what was going on with this offense. I don't expect it to be this bad for the rest of the year, but they do have a tough matchup against San Francisco this week. But Robinson only owned in 33.6% of leagues, 4 targets, 2 catches for 50 yards. I mean, he was playing on 92% of the snaps, and he was just behind Cooper Kupp, who left this game in targets. So, like, Cooper Kupp, I think, had like 6 targets, and Robinson had 5. I mean, 4. And honestly, Robinson has the most chemistry and experience in this wide receiver core now, especially with Stafford. So it's good reason to think that he could emerge as the guy. But Tyler Johnson, to me, when I watch them play, seems to me the most explosive and the biggest playmaker. So that's why I kind of feel like it still could be him. He's only owned in 12.9% fantasy leagues, 3 targets, 2 catches for 20 yards. I mean, it is what it is, but he played on 87% of the snaps, and he could be the guy. So he just seems like a big play waiting to happen, and we're still waiting on it. But Sean McVay's a genius. Matt Stafford's a very competent quarterback. I feel like one of these guys is going to get it going if not the other guy that I'm talking about here in a minute. Next has got to be Darnell Mooney at 5, 57.3% fantasy, owned in 57.3% leagues. I mean, I'm not surprised it's that low after last week. He was pretty much done. Like, that he was almost not involved at all. I ended up dropping in one league. I might try to pick him back up. I don't know. But he's going up against Kansas City this week. He had 7 targets, 3 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. He really flashed some big playability with Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. I seen one catch he had where he made a nice move, caught the ball, and then made another move to do a flipping in the end zone. Really impressive. And then there was another big play for like 40 yards. He was on deep post, and Cousins threw the ball, and then he just gave up on his route at the break and just kind of stopped, and the ball landed right in the wide open where he would have been going. And I mean, there was nobody around him. So I don't know what was going on with that. I'm sure they'll work that out. But I mean, that was another one. That'd have been like 4 for like 100 yards at least, 110 yards at least, So we've been talking about even bigger stat line. And he tied the team in lead in targets with Drake London at 7. And both of them looked very good. And I firmly believe Kirk Cousins could support both wide receivers in this offense. So definitely be thinking about Darnell Mooney. I think this offense is about to take off. Honestly, don't give up on them yet for sure. Next is going to be Josh Downs for Indianapolis Colts, owned in like 0.1% of leagues. This week he's going at Green Bay. There's been no real emergence of a wide receiver 1 in Indianapolis. Alec Pierce has been doing better. Pittman's still there. But honestly, they just don't throw a ton either. And in the camp, there was a ton of buzz about the chemistry between Downs and Richardson. So if you need help, he's coming back. You probably won't even have to use a waiver priority to get this guy. And he could end up being the wide receiver 1 if him and Downs really have that chemistry when he comes in, and he's kind of that possession guy. Because honestly, for this team, he's kind of a lot like a Tank Dell, where like he gets the ball short yardage, he can bust it very quickly. So Josh Downs is one that you might want to think about picking up, stashing, seeing what happens with him. And last but certainly not least, a rookie for the Rams, Jordan Whittington, owned in 1.3% of fantasy leagues, going up against San Fran too. Tough matchup, but 2 targets, 2 catches for 22 yards on 50% of the snaps. That was almost the same production as Tyler Johnson, and it was actually better, just 1 less target, and he only played 50% of the snaps. So he had a really good preseason. Matthew Stafford was talking him up, saying that he expected big things from this kid. I mean, it doesn't get much more opportunity than losing the top two wide receivers on your team, much less two of the top wide receivers in the league. And here it is, kid. Wide open opportunity for you. And if he gets the opportunity and he starts blowing up, I mean, he could be the flyer that you wish you'd have just picked up and stashed. Honestly, with all the question marks on this team, if you miss out on those other guys and have the opportunity to pick him up and just stash him, I think it's worth it just to see if they work him in a little bit more in this offense because he looked really explosive in the preseason. But that's going to round out my wide receivers and then rolled on to my tight ends. The target title for this segment's the same as it was last year, and it's so true. A barren wasteland of despair. I mean, dude, tight end's so bad. I think I heard somebody say the other day there was a tight end that had like 4 targets, 2 catches for 20 something yards, and he was a top 10 tight end. I mean, that should tell you right there. That's just crazy. Okay. So, but we're just chasing points, honestly, with tight ends at this point. And who better to chase than Hunter Henry? This is the number one guy out of New England, owning 10.3% of fantasy leagues. He's going to be at the New York Jets this week. And you think New York Jets, man, that's kind of might be a tough matchup. Well, they lost like 5 defensive starters this past week, like for multiple weeks. So the Jets defense is about to be one to target unless they got some studs coming out of nowhere. I think they lost 2 starting defensive linemen. C.J. Mosley went down. One of their quarterbacks went down, and then I think a safety went down. And so this defense is nothing like the Jets that we were expecting. So I firmly believe that Hunter Henry might have a really solid chance at repeating something similar to this stat line of 12 targets, 8 catches for 109 yards that he had this past week. And without the team, with New England not having a true wide receiver one, I mean, I think there's just a ton of opportunity for Hunter Henry to be had. He seems like a favorite target of Jacoby Brissett right now. So as long as Brissett's in there, I think Hunter Henry's got a decent chance to be a top 10 tight end every game. And with as tough as it is out there right now, like I was just saying about the top 10 tight ends having like 4 and 5 points, I think you could definitely do worse than picking up Hunter Henry and crossing your fingers. So like him a lot. Number 2 for me has got to be Mike Gesicki in Cincinnati, owning 2.3%, 2.7% fantasy leagues. This week he's going up against Washington. This past week, 9 targets, 7 catches for 91 yards. I mean, honestly, Cincinnati's just looking for production at any pass catcher that they can find right now. Jamar Chase is still trying to get his feet back up underneath him. T. Higgins is still out. Yosivas caught 2 touchdown passes, but I think he only had 2 catches on the day. And Gesicki is a big, athletic, great pass catching tight end. And I think we saw how Joe Burrow used his tight end in LSU. He's used them in Cincinnati, whoever it was, and it's starting to look like Mike Gesicki is going to be his guy. And they honestly look like a match made in heaven between Gesicki and Burrow and the way they looked in this week. And I don't think it's out of the ordinary to see some kind of decent stat line each week. Now, I think when Chase and Higgins are back at 100%, we might be talking a different story. It'd probably definitely hurt his production, but right now that is not the case. And as Burrow gets more comfortable with his wrist and it gets a little bit looser and stronger as the year goes, I think we see him get to be more efficient in the Burrow of old that we expect. And I think that's going to benefit Mike Gesicki. Not to mention he's a great red zone target. And we know Joe Burrow likes to go to his tight ends in the red zone. So another good reason there for Gesicki. Number 3, still going to be Colby Parkinson. I know, like, this guy told us that last week, and he only had like 3 points. Yes, I know. He let us down. Honestly, the whole Rams offense let us down last week, guys. And Sean McVay is too good of a coach. Stafford's too good of a quarterback for that to happen 2 weeks in a row. I'm not giving up on this offense yet. Not giving up on Colby Parkinson yet, who has a tremendous amount of targets and opportunity to be had. And he had a good week 1 with some of those starters. So Colby Parkinson for the Rams, owning 43.6% fantasy leagues. This week, tough matchup at San Francisco. At home against San Francisco. I mean, I know it's a tough matchup, guys, but dude, like, for one, it's not like, you're finding a whole bunch of tight ends out there that are a lot better. And at least he has a bunch of pass volume opportunity that's available to be seized. So I'm still not giving up. I still like him, especially with Kupp and Puka out. Stafford gets back. I think McVay tries to be kind of cute with some of his scheming. I think Parkson could be involved in some of that. So I say pick him up, hang on to him. Even if he has a bad week in San Francisco, if you got another option, maybe you start them. If you got to, start Colton Parkson. I'll be starting him in a couple leagues. I can tell you that for sure. So I'm still not giving up on him. I think he still has a decent chance to bounce back. And I think he could be a productive tight end this year, especially with as bad as so many are at the position. And that's going to round out our tight ends, and we're going to roll right on into our streaming defenses. And honestly, this is a really tough week for streaming defenses. I really don't like a ton. I really don't even like these options that I have, but I do feel like now these are under 60%. There's some better options over 60%, but the ones under 60%, these are the two best that I do like, and that's Chicago at Indianapolis. Honestly, it's because Richardson's just turning the ball over a lot. He's got 4 interceptions so far this year already, including 3 last week. And Chicago defense has already got 4 interceptions this year. So they have looked really good this year so far. I just think it's an increased chance for sacks with the way Richardson likes to tuck the ball and run and doesn't really throw the ball away a lot. They're only owned in like 35% of fantasy leagues. So I've been really – I apologize, guys. I've been really impressed with how Chicago's defense has looked so far this year. And I know their offense hasn't been great. If it gets any better, I think this defense could look even better. So I like Chicago a lot at Indianapolis. Even if it's not a great game, I think they get some turnovers to have a chance for a touchdown. Next has got to be Green Bay at Tennessee. Honestly, Tennessee's just given up the most points to DST so far this year. That's correct. Not Carolina. Tennessee has given up the most points to DSTs this year. And honestly, they've got a total of 5 turnovers and 7 sacks so far against them. Green Bay already has 6 turnovers for their DST so far this year that they've seized on. So what does that tell me? There's probably going to be a fair amount of turnovers on Green Bay's favor. I think it's a solid chance that there's several of those. And the more turnovers you got, the better chance you got for one of them turning into a touchdown. So I like Green Bay at Tennessee this week. They're only owned in like 5.8% fantasy leagues. So I think that's another solid one to stream. And that's all my streaming defenses. Now, a couple top 10 options at kicker. That's right. All of these kickers are top 10 at their position. But, and these are in no specific order. Blake Grupe, New Orleans at home versus Philadelphia. Chase McLaughlin for Tampa Bay at home versus Denver. And then Cairo Santos for Chicago at Indianapolis in their dome. All 3 of them have been great this year. Like I said, all 3 of them top 10. I think Grupe's like 5. McLaughlin's like 8. Or no, I'm sorry. Santos is 5. Grupe is like 7 or 8. And McLaughlin is like 9 or something like that. Either way, they've all been really solid every week this year. And then they're kicking in pretty solid places. 2 of them are in domes. And then the other one's at Tampa Bay, which normally has decent mild weather. So those are just some options for you right there if you're streaming at kicker. And that's going to round us out, guys. Be looking for Clay to get this graphic up. Be looking for us later on this week for our Start Sit Sleeper Pod. And we appreciate everybody listening. Thank you to our sponsors, especially Mimi's Children's Boutique, for hanging with us from the beginning. Please go out, like, subscribe, follow, comment, download, any of your podcast platform of choice. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you want to hear of, what you don't want to hear of. We just appreciate everybody listening. We appreciate all our sponsors. We just love doing this and hope that it helps you out in your fantasy season. And until next time, y'all keep chasing that trophy.
This ain't how it's supposed to be. It should be just you and me. I feel